Hello, dear listener. It's me, James. Before we begin, I wanted to make you aware of something that's coming up on Wednesday, November 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. Yimmy Denver, in partnership with Denver Streets Partnership, Strong Denver, Greater Denver Transit, and the Denver Bicycle Lobby, are hosting a happy hour at Pete's Pub at 833 Colorado Boulevard. It's going to be a great chance to meet other urbanists, and if you're looking for a way to plug in, this is an awesome way to meet others in the community who are passionate about all the things we talk about here on the podcast. I'm going to try to make it, and I hope to see you there. Hello, I'm James Warren.
And I'm Andy Cushion.
And this is the Denver Urbanism Podcast, a podcast on all things city building in the indebted city of Denver. Well, dear listener, unlike CityCast Denver, which wakes up at 4 a.m. every morning to record a podcast, we are a little bit slower to the punch. But what we lack in immediacy, we make up in considered, well-balanced takes about all things Denver.
Also, when you wait a day, you get a big press release news drop from one of the major organizations that benefits from $150 million of investment.
Yeah, it was very...
So distance makes the heart grow fonder of a vibrant Denver bond.
Temporal distance. Yeah, the Broncos, of course, they just released their announcement.
I'm distracting us.
It's okay.
I just think, to me, that's hilarious. Everybody who is rushing to get out their kind of immediate Denver election coverage. It's this is the biggest story that will swamp literally every other story that we have the ability to tell about 2A, for the rest of time.
And it's also funny, the kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge of listen, we're not doing any of these projects for the Broncos. And then as soon as they all pass, Broncos are like, great, here's our plan.
Yeah.
We're ready to go. Here's it is.
Is this making the pod? Or are we just rambling here?
I mean, it makes the Patreon.
That we have the advantage at Denver Urbanism of just doing what we want, and how we want to do it.
And what I wanted to do was not spend last night editing a podcast. And so here we are, a little bit removed from the election. We are recording this the day after the election. And we're going to have a little bit of election inspection like we did last year, although this is a much more Denver-specific year. And we're going to talk a little bit here up top about what the importance of bonds are, what the importance of kind of some of these electoral consequences are from an urbanist perspective. But then also we're going to kind of look back at, Andy and I yesterday made predictions about how we thought the bond would go, how we thought the different elections would go, and we're going to explain why we thought that and why we were either right or wrong. So let's get into it. Andy, let's just start from a broad level. Bonds. Why should we as urbanists care about this stuff?
Well, so the city doesn't have the ability to just borrow money endlessly, which apparently the federal government does have the ability to do. So we have to borrow money in controlled ways. And a bond is a controlled way of borrowing money. It's good. The voters have the ability to see the list of reasons that the city would want to borrow money, and also to get a pretty specific payment schedule, repayment schedule. Denver actually has pretty high credit rating, with Moody's or Standard & Poor. So we get pretty good rates for bonds, which is also pretty good if you want to do bonds a lot, which we have done in Denver. I think this is our third bond cycle in 7 years. But bonds are also kind of the only way you can pay for certain projects. Unless you get a big grant for $150 million from a given, the federal government or the state government or something like that, you just don't have $90 million laying around in some bank account in the city to invest in a really major project.
Funding it through an income stream, right? Just funding it based on taxes every year wouldn't make sense because you end up paying for a third of a recreation center in the first year. Next year, there's a recession. We can't actually pay for the rest of that recreation center. So bonds are a great way to get a chunk of money immediately, get the project going, and kind of have a sure capital stack for the rest of the project.
Bonds are also funded through property taxes, which in a previous episode, I think James listed as preferable to sales taxes in terms of who they affect and which members of the city, really have to pay for these.
And this is something that I do kind of have not a gripe. I just don't think it's as good governance to fund bond projects that are specifically about deferred maintenance. And that has to do with our low property taxes, right? We have all this deferred maintenance because the city doesn't get the income stream it needs every single year to take care of its HVAC replacements, its pool repairs, its loans like dredgings. The things that kind of you need to do on a regular basis as a city should just be funded from a steady, reliable tax base. Denver's taxes, specifically property taxes, are just not quite high enough to do all that. And so part of the reason that we saw the list of bond projects being kind of tilted toward maintenance and repair is because our taxes are not quite as high as they really should be. So it is good governance to do bonds, to fund big projects, to do this in the city. It's maybe not good governance when those projects are maintenance projects. But let's dive in to what happened last night, what we thought was going to happen and what did happen. And if you haven't read the news somehow, and this is breaking to you, spoiler alert, Denver said yes to like everything. And some of this is electoral conditions at a national level. Democrats were very engaged. Everybody wanted to go vote. And Democrats tend to vote more heavily for things like state programs, LL and MM, we can talk a little bit about, but bond projects as well. It was a great night for Democrats, and that was reflected here locally. Also, we just have like an electorate that is very pro spending on a lot of cool projects and passing some other things that we can talk about as well. Let's dive into the specific ballot measures that we were voting on yesterday. We had 2A through E. Those were all the bonds. We had 2F and 2G, which we'll talk about here in a sec. And then we had a referred measure and a couple referenda that we can talk about as well. So let's start with 2A. 2A was our transportation measure. I said this was going to pass with 63% of the vote. You said this was going to pass with 65% of the vote. We're not far off.
You're closer than me. We'll give you a little credit on that one.
Why do you think it was going to pass, and why do you think it did pass?
I just think that voters are comfortable with spending public money on transportation infrastructure. I think voters are less comfortable spending money on other things. And we talked in the last election inspection that voters did not previously approve a sales tax for affordable housing. But currently your property tax money goes towards repaving roads and sort of, fixing roads. And actually there's a lot of pretty big projects in this 2A bundle that I think you could be in various parts of town and you felt like it benefited you.
Yeah, this was got the least amount of votes, but I think that you're generally right. Transportation and infrastructure are popular things. And in general, bonds are kind of a popular thing. People are smart enough to recognize that their taxes actually haven't gone up when they've passed previous bonds. And they have the list of all the good stuff in front of them. And the city's saying, do you want this stuff? And people are just saying, yeah. And so I think that happens with transportation stuff. You don't have to be a wonk to understand that an underpass needs improvement and that there are smart people in the city working on that and recommending that. And it's something cities should do. I think, and I think you probably agree, that this got the least because parts of this were highly publicized. I don't want to say handouts, but
they were associated in the public press with the Denver Broncos.
They were encouragements for the Denver Broncos to stay. And as we kind of hinted at up top, the day that we approved this, the Broncos said, and here's our big plan for the site. 2A probably lost some votes because people were uncomfortable with that. But in general, people wanted this.
Mm-hmm. Some people are really enthusiastic about bridges, James. The type of people who maybe make full podcasts about it.
They're going to check yes and no. They're just so excited.
Yeah.
Let's move on to 2B. 2B was about parks. I thought that this would have less support than transportation, but that it would still pass. I said 58%.
I also thought it would have less support than transportation, and I also thought it would still pass. I'll just say that, to me, it seemed pretty obvious that it was going to pass because we just had an election 2 years ago where voters were asked if they wanted to approve development on Park Hill. This was also in a sort of low turnout, non-midterms, non-general election context, and voters said that they did not want development on Park Hill. So then when asked to actually spend the money that was presumably always going to be asked of voters to actually spend the money to make it a park, voters said yes, because they'd already shown that they supported Park Hill. So to me, that felt like kind of a surefire. I think there are people who felt consternation and sadness because they loved the idea of developing, the Park Hill golf course, which I did too for a time.
Yeah, I don't know if there would be some kind of coalition of people who are maybe a little still upset about that election and groups of people who are just I don't support new debt ever, right? And whether that might manifest as noticeable drops in votes for this measure. But Clearly, that did not happen. People like parks. It's like a hard one to vote against, right?
Correct.
It's like we have a whole measure, and it's just like the thing that we all love and support here. People love the outdoors. Let's move on to 2C. 2C was a very specific one. It was a children's advocacy center and the Westside Health Clinic. This is kind of weird because it was just 2 items, and I thought this one might get fewer votes as a result of that. I thought it was going to be kind of near the bottom in terms of votes because people were like, that doesn't have a lot to do with me. Either I don't have kids or I live on the east side of town. So I said it was going to be in like the mid 50s.
Yeah, I thought it was going to pass, and I thought it was going to pass by a landslide.
You said 70%, and this one got 0.94%. So you were like very, very close.
So do I get a prize or something like that?
We'll talk about that after the show.
All right.
So I'm trying to reflect on why I was so off. Why do you think people really like this?
Well, I just think that, like, the word children was in the name. I really do. I think
And
it's
health?
as simple as that. Yeah, Children's Health Center. Children and Westside Health, right? Like, I think that this is a city that cares about health. Again, we just had a recent election, 2024, where we approved more money for Denver Health. And that was a pretty generous thing for a lot more voters than voted in this election to do.
Okay, 2D. 2D was a kind of complex one. It was a bunch of different types of buildings. There's libraries. There was the American Indian Cultural Center. There was also the Police Training Center. And I thought this one might do the worst because I thought that people might see Police Training Center and kind of think like Cop City outside of Atlanta. Denver is not always the most cop-friendly city. And so I thought that it might suffer as a result. Turns out I was wrong about that too. What'd you think and why?
But you still thought it would pass.
I thought it would pass.
Let's just give you credit. It did pass.
I did say they were all going to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was going to pass. I thought it was like fairly uncontroversial. This Cop City thing, I had heard one person ever make that comparison, and no one else in my life was talking
me just
about
now.
it. No. I had heard someone else say this. I'll tell you, my husband voted no on this one, and I was like, oh, really? Why? And he said his reasons why, and I had never heard any other person say them. And also, he voted at 5:45 p.m. on election day. So, like, if those people had those feelings, they did not successfully get those feelings out there.
Yeah. I think that people like libraries, right? And like that's a big thing too. It's like libraries and parks, kind of hard to argue against that. And there's a lot of libraries in this one. 2E was housing and shelters. This isn't from like a true best practice urbanist way, the way we should be providing housing, frankly. But like, people see a need for affordable housing. They see somebody who says, I will put millions of dollars toward affordable housing, and they're going to say yes. So I thought this one was going to pass. I thought it was going to be kind of like in the middle of the range. I said 60%, but mine went from like mid 50s to mid high 60s. And so it was kind of in the middle of the range of the votes. It was just a little bit higher than I anticipated.
This one, I think, to your earlier point, like this was a fairly narrow list of places that would benefit from this specific project list. And I just think that this would be the thing that people say, oh, well, like, aren't we already spending a lot of money? Or don't we already have Denver Housing Authority? Or don't we already have this agency that spends money on this thing? I didn't think that this was going to fail by any margin, but I think your theory earlier of like how people would feel about a Westside Health Clinic and Children's Advocacy Center, it's like, yeah, those are pretty narrow, but like those populations are populations that I guess people just have a little bit more sympathy for than people who are poor. Yeah. Saying that, again, we have passed many taxes. I just think you have to like look at political history here. In Denver, we like passed a 0.25% sales tax, for homeless resolution. Did that like 4 years ago. So if we did that then, I think we're going to continue doing something of that now, which is no doubt what the mayor must have thought last year when he asked people for more money for that. But that did not work. Yeah.
Okay, those are the bonds. I think that again, this is a signal to especially future bond deciders that they can be ambitious. They can put interesting, ambitious projects in there because we like them here and we appreciate that those investments are being made in our community. I always love when I see a project that the city's completed and there's like a little plaque or something that tells you which bond brought that into being. That that always is like encouraging to me because I'm like, oh yeah, here's the thing that I voted for, and here it is in person.
Well, I want to be a little more cynical here. I want to give a W and I want to give an L. Can I give a W and an L in this case?
To a specific project?
Specific like notion here.
Sure.
I want to give a W to the consulting firm Sasaki, who's
Okay.
done a lot of work for the city recently.
yeah.
And also today it was revealed is also the
Two
group that is
Broncos,
doing
yeah.
the Broncos Stadium Master Plan.
Right.
Sasaki also is the folks, they're doing the community engagement for, the Park Hill vision. And also I want to genuinely compliment the staff from Sasaki who I, worked with as one of those folks on the downtown area plan. But I just think like Sasaki gets a W here. Like clearly they had their finger on the pulse of some successful kind of big projects that were going to work. And I think this means more work for Sasaki. So don't they win? And the L I would give to Michael Hancock, because it is like now a pretty specific, unflattering kind of case for him that like one of the things that he proposed and had his name behind was one of only a couple bond measures that have failed at all in the last 30 years.
Right.
And that, this Park Hill thing that he was very supportive and very aggressive in pursuing Park Hill for development and a park. It wouldn't have just been development, of course. And voters didn't like that. And voters have now chosen to just like totally erase that notion. We're gone from that. We're spending $70 million for Park Hill Park, which was not Michael Hancock's preferred vision. So I think that's an L. Sorry, I'm sure he's enjoying some quiet days.
He's a huge listener, so
yeah, I'm sure he is. But the L goes to him.
Yeah.
Can I also give the L to the rich?
Oh well, we're gonna get there, but yeah, absolutely.
Because I want to give an L to the rich, because you can go, dear listener, onto like Denver Elections website, and I encourage you to do so. Like they run a good website where you can go and look at like maps of precinct breakdowns of which precincts in Denver voted for or against specific parts of the ballot. And really, the only folks who voted against any of these kind of specific tranches of projects are just wealthy people. Like you can just look, and it's just the parts of the town where that are like the wealthiest and the whitest parts of town.
Yeah. Well, let me read something that I about 2F, and for listeners at home, 2F was, do we change the name of excise and licenses to license and consumer protection? And I wrote a very prescient kind of reflection on this last night as I was thinking about this before it passed. This is the measure that's on everyone's mind. This is where Denver truly defines who it is, not just to itself, but the world at large. By the way, listener, writ large is not the same thing as at large. If you use writ large to sound fancy, you don't sound fancy, you sound wrong. Anyway, are we a city of excise and license? Or are we a city of licenses, yes, but no longer excise? Instead, consumer protection. As it turns out, the voters showed up. Let's go, Denver.
I actually voted no on this.
Yeah, I did too.
Did you?
I did mostly to be a silly, goofy guy.
No, I did to be a silly, goofy guy, but like we've been asked to change a lot of names of agencies and asked to put people like in the mayor's cabinet a lot in the last few years. And I actually just think that like the mayor's showing us he doesn't want that, because he keeps like trying to consolidate different departments, or not keeps, but has consolidated a little bit. I don't know. I just think like maybe we should look more holistically at like how many people need to be in the mayor's cabinet and like how many agencies we think need to exist. Because we just keep getting these one by one. I mean, it's been like this slow trickle. And I just think like if it's not holistic, to me, I don't want to vote yes anymore on these.
I reckon that we, like, as a city...
That is not a deeply held thought, though. Like, I don't care that it passed at all. Yeah. I just want to say that's why I voted no.
Yeah, I reckon that we, as a city, have... a pretty high level of trust in institutions, right? Like we like when our public health system gets more money, even if, you specifically don't use the public health system. We like when our kids are going to schools, even if you don't specifically have kids. And I think like this is one where like it really just came down to trust in institutions. Excise and licenses is coming to us and saying, hey, can we change our name to licenses and consumer protection? And people are like, that sounds great. That's more transparent to me. I can kind of intuitively understand like what the hell is an excise.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even like to exercise.
Oh, that's staying in.
If it's staying in, why did you have to clarify out loud? It was staying in, James. It was good content.
It was great content. So anyway, 2F passed with flying colors. This passed with more % of the vote than anything else. 2G was one that actually changes how our city elects officials. What did you think was going to happen?
I thought it was going to fail. I thought it was going to fail. This is the one that I feel in like common conversation with people, I heard the most kind of confusion about.
Yeah.
I also thought it was going to fail because like if you just like add up Sarah Parody's vote and like Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez's vote, they had, a fairly wide net of people, who would actually vote them and support them. And neither of them were like explicitly supporting this reform. I voted no on this one as well, I guess because I just like hate every letter after E. I mean, I don't know. Give the W, I guess, to the other council members who like to change rules for people who are not them.
Yeah. No pointing fingers here. But I also thought that it was going to fail. I thought it was going to narrowly fail. And really, again, because I kind of like the system was working. I don't think people are generally that upset about council. The people who don't think that, I don't know how many of them were like, well, the problem is how our elections are run.
Well, good campaigning changes everything. And there was some good campaigning on this. They said, make sure at-large receives 50%.
Right.
And like most voters who have voted before, most voters are not first-time voters. Most voters are familiar with the fact that you have to get a majority to get into office. I think the more truthful thing that could have been written in that ad is make sure at-large goes to runoff as well. Like that's all it is. A runoff election has even lower a turnout than a small April election anyways. So I don't know. I just think this is like, to me, it seemed kind of petty. And I just think there was a great proposal, in my opinion. There was a great proposal from Candice Tabaka, who is not like my political savior. But, in the last sort of term that there was city council, there were going to be 2 at-large city council people who were going to term out, and we were doing redistricting. And so Candice Tabaka's thought was like, okay, why don't we just use this as the opportunity to get rid of at-large? And we can have 13 council districts instead, which allows for smaller districts that kind of allow for more direct representation. And that was a sincere theory of politics and how politics should be done in Denver City Council by somebody who's not trying to change the rules for somebody who's not them, but is actually trying to bring more people into the same rules as them. This feels like a solution in search of a problem. Yeah. Because now we're just going to find like new and novel political behaviors, which is already the case in at-large. Right. I don't know.
And I think the opposite of her. I think we should have all at-large
Oh, really?
council people. Yeah. We can talk about that on a different episode.
Sure. I'd love to. I'm surprised with that, but I'm great.
310. I also thought was going to fail. And this was like a kind of a weird one. We had to vote to affirm a rule that city council passed. And so if you said no, we would overturn that rule. But I think I don't think it was so confusingly written that anyone's like, wait, I voted the wrong way. 310 was the flavored nicotine one. A vote of yes meant that kids and adults could not buy flavored nicotine. A vote of no meant that any, people could buy nicotine again. And I said kids specifically because that was the big thing. Kids are getting access to these flavored nicotine products. They're marketed to kids. They're specifically made for kids. So why are we doing this? I kind of thought that people's kind of libertarian streak would take over. We're in a tough time for businesses and for the tax base in Denver. I thought people might respond to those things, but they didn't.
I think this is a pretty straightforward one. Ultimately, I also thought it was going to fail, but I think seeing the results today, obviously hindsight's 2020, but the conversation was dominated by our existing political leaders who were supportive of it coming out and saying, we are trying to protect children from addictive products. Yeah. That was the story. Right. It wasn't, we hate convenience stores and want to drive them out of business. That was never the point of the policy. Right. And then for the convenience stores owners to become the face of the opposition is not surprising, but it's not really compelling against the actual narrative of we passed this law because we want to get addictive products out of the hands of children. Right. To be clear, children aren't supposed to buy or consume these products anyways. This didn't change that rule. And everybody who is making this point online right now, all you have to do is drive over to city lines is well, okay, I guess that's its own age check, isn't it? If you have the ability to drive or kind of get out of town to go buy this product. I guess the other reason I thought it was going to fail was because, again, looking at recent history in Denver, we passed mushroom decriminalization, in Denver really narrowly in 2019. And then we were very supportive of the statewide decriminalization and sort of medical use of certain natural chemicals, a couple years ago. And I just thought okay, Denver's a town for psychonauts. People are I love my Swisher Sweets or whatever, I just thought that was what people were feeling. I think the reason you and I both thought that, though, is because we are young men of a certain age. And I just
You're vaping right now.
I am not actively vaping, Mom. I am just, but
vaping.
I think like my husband, again, just to name check, like he worked at a school for years and he was like just absolutely livid about this one. He was like, I can't believe they want to like bring, flavored vapes back. These are like poison. This is the worst. It's the worst, the worst, the worst. So like, and I just think there's like a lot of people who have friends with kids in school or have kids in school themselves or recently had a teenager. And like that the narrative was, we want to get addictive chemicals out of the hands of children.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty compelling.
Totally. Do you want to read what I wrote about school board?
No.
Okay. So statewide, we also had 2 elections, LL and MM. Both of these had to do with providing healthy meals to children in our schools. So based on that alone, it was pretty obvious that these were both going to pass.
I think a theme of this election that I hadn't really put my finger on before is like children.
Yeah.
I feel like a big theme of this is like just children, and like all of the things having to do with children kind of then also like gave support to each other, and people who were big children's advocates like turned out, I guess, for this one.
Sure. Yeah, great. Power to them. I predicted that LL would pass with more of the vote than MM because LL just said the state can keep the extra revenue that it's already collecting. MM was a genuine increase on households earning over $300,000 a year. So if there's going to be people earning over $300,000 a year who are like, whoa, don't make me pay another $600. And so I was right about that. I was wrong about the proportions as I was with everything else, but I don't know if there's a whole lot to uncover here.
I do think that there's something to uncover here because I think that part of the opposition to like further increasing the taxes, Denver is where like a lot of rich people live. Mm-hmm. If you are like a well-to-do person in Colorado, you either live in Denver or near Denver. No, I mean, there's obviously rich people in Aspen. I see you shaking your head, but there's also a lot of poor people that live in like mountain areas. Like you don't have to be by definition wealthy to live outside the city in that way. Only to say that I think that if people really had felt in opposition to this, the thing that they would have been articulating is like, no, we should like means test this program. And I don't agree with the notion of, that everybody should get access to this program. Also, this like the MM of it all is kind of a subsidy for Colorado farmers.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Like not in a secret way. Like, that's the part of the program that is not being funded right now.
Yeah.
Like they have money to source the food that they're, preparing for kids, but they haven't really been able to like stand up this kind of direct purchase agreements from local farmers, which is like a core premise of the sort of program that they set up. You would think that you could kind of negotiate down like why do a program that does all these things? And, we don't need to pay for like rich kids' food and stuff like that. And that like people who, right now in Denver, like make good money and like take their kids out for food or like, make their kids food every day for school would feel the same way. But I actually just think that like this is a winning message. It's just all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The more you can have a program that applies to everybody in the population, kind of equally, the more popular those programs tend to be. And yeah, this is a great example of that. We're not means testing any of these kids. We're just anyone can bring a meal that from home if they want, but if they don't have that, they can have one right here at school. And I think that's easy to understand, and it's very popular as a result.
And I'm just going to pick a very small bone. Here. On the language that people have used is that this raises taxes on people making above $300,000 a year.
Oh, sure.
Like we are not allowed to have, currently Tabor works to require a flat income tax. People who make $300,000 a year are not paying a higher rate. They're just getting the amount of deductions they can take from their taxes reduced.
Right.
And like, if that seems like I'm just moving the one to another side of the equation, like I'm not. What could we do if we did tax people who made that much more? We could actually increase the tax rate on people who make $300,000 a year, and then not only would we find a magic $100 million to like pay for this food for children initiative, we would actually find a lot more than $100 million. Yeah. So it's just funny that like tinkering with the deduction, which allowed for more of their income to be taxable at the flat tax rate, is what happened here. We did not actually increase taxes on people making $300,000 a year. Yeah, that's a good distinction, and another reason I think people should be kind of
eyeing Tabor more when we're talking about revenue in the state. Let's round it out. There was a ton of projects in this bond.
Wait, can we shout out like one other little thing?
Please.
Littleton.
Oh. Ooh, yeah, Littleton says, listen, you can't rezone ever again.
You can't do like city-initiated rezonings, and also maybe ADUs are like legally suspect.
Right.
It's so wild.
It was a crazy move to do that. Doesn't necessarily surprise me that it happened, but like, man, what an interesting climate we're in, where like Lakewood just passed a more or less overturn of single unit zoning in their entire city. Meanwhile, Littleton is saying that's all frozen, just like, forever, and it's going to be very difficult to rezone properties now.
My prediction that you didn't ask me for is I think that this is going to end up becoming like basically the test case, right? Like the citizens have now put in their charter stuff that goes against state law. And I just think that this is now the test case for when the state either comes in and sues Littleton and says, well, you can't do that because we've just required you to change your rules.
Right.
Or the rules that are the statewide rules maybe get thrown out by like somebody who says, actually, Littleton has the right to do their own thing. Like, I think that this is, we've just watched someone tee up the big test case.
Yep.
And to me, I'm nervous, but I mean, this was inevitably going to happen, that someone was going to like really force the issue on whether or not we can have state mandates for density. But just for context, you could fit, so like the population of Littleton, I think is like maybe 45,000 or a little less than that. And it's like 12 square miles. And I was looking to see if there's any Denver neighborhoods that are bigger than that, because we are a much bigger city. Green Valley Ranch is like 9 square miles and has like 48,000 people. Yeah. Why is that? Because Green Valley Ranch has apartments.
Yeah. Well, you can fit the entire population of Littleton within the borders of Littleton, the city.
That is so wild. Yeah. Why is no one talking about this?
It's interesting. Too many golf courses on the mind. Let's finish it out, like I said, with looking at a good project and a project that we're not as excited about. What do you choose with your bad project?
Not my bad project, but I just think it's true that, like, if you listen to the people who were part of shepherding the bond projects forward, the 8th Avenue Viaduct, 8th Avenue rebuild, which was like, I think the largest single like individually named project in terms of the dollar cost, was just not in like the stakeholder meetings as the highest priority. And so like, I guess I want to give credit then to like the people, maybe the mayor or anybody around him, that were able to kind of convince him that we could throw the biggest thing into the mix with very little explanation and get voters to say yes. Like, I don't think that we've like dissuaded that political behavior in any meaningful way. But I do think that like there are a lot of open questions, because the language of the project still basically states, community planning will inform the future of the neighborhood's land use and will provide mobility recommendations for this rebuild. Improvements will consider access for all modes of transportation to deliver enhanced mobility through this critical corridor and support future reconstruction of 6th Avenue Viaduct. That is like not very specific at all. And then I just think that we're going to go forward for the rest of our like kind of, time talking about this city and only know this as the thing that basically like kind of made it possible to keep the Broncos in Denver. Mm-hmm. And like the Broncos dropped their vision for how the 8th Avenue reconstruction will go, and just today, and I feel extremely confident that that's the vision. Like, I don't think that there's a second vision. Right. I'm sure that like the amount of trees to plant, or if bike lanes are on the sidewalk or down on the road, that can all still be informed, and like, the quality of the sidewalk materials maybe, but like, I think that this is the Godzilla project. This is the thing that kind of comes through and smashes and sort of changes everything in its image in a way that like I don't actually know if I disagree with. It's just that the like political, actions that made this happen, I think are, they're just going to continue to be suspected for a long, long time, no matter what anybody says. Yeah,
I agree. I'm. The 8th is going to be very interesting. My bus goes over the 8th Viaduct today, and it will go presumably through this neighborhood in the future. So I'm going to have a front row seat the whole time. Very excited to see how that shakes out and kind of what those changes look like. And again, kind of whether like what this vision actually ends up looking like once we get more details.
Well, if you want to find out, you can read the excellent little coverage in Denverite, which just came out today about, the Broncos have confirmed that they're going to do 8th Avenue their way.
Yeah. My least favorite project was the R.E.P. Taylor Senior Center, because don't those seniors have enough already?
Such hard-hitting questions.
This is not actually my least favorite project. My least favorite project was the Sloan's Lake environmental improvements. And I didn't like this one for what it isn't. It's well publicized that Sloan's Lake needs to be dredged. There's just a ton of silt and sediment that is, as I hear, biocontaminated, that just needs to be pulled out of there. There are fish that are just dying during summer. You're not supposed to go out there, swim out there. This is a huge attractor in the region, and the fact that we didn't have dredging on there, it would have been an $80 million project, but
we didn't have $80 million plus to spend on any one project in this
so
fund
true.
list. We just didn't have
Let's just steal it from Park Hill. But to me, the fact that we're deferring this toward an unknown date, we still don't have a plan. We have no plan for dredging Sloan's Lake, as far as I understand, and that is a problem for the city that is becoming more intense of a problem every single year. So I love the environmental improvements. The environmental improvements, I think, are going to help ensure that it doesn't get worse than it is today. But we really need to dredge that lake. What was your favorite project?
I think my favorite project was also a really, really friggin' expensive project. So voters maybe didn't get as much didn't notice this project in here. A $75 million project to put a new underpass and sort of build out an underpass in the area around the National Western Center complex of it all. I also kind of like this because it's funny. It's so telling that voters are comfortable with infrastructure improvements.
Yeah.
Even as I should mention, this was the less popular of the popular bond measures. I just think that the N line actually has ended up, for RTD, the N line, the commuter rail, has ended up being actually a slightly overperformer, and it could get a lot better, and it doesn't take that much to make it a lot better.
Yeah.
And also, if you've ever tried to walk, run, bike, or even drive by the Western Center, the state of affairs right now is awful. It's just awful.
Yeah.
And so I just think this is straightforwardly a great project. So just to shout out some of it, it includes construction of the Marion Underpass, a new crossing under 3 rail lines, along with excavation and earthwork, construction, groundwater mitigation, utility infrastructure, ADA. There's literally no sidewalk in this whole section right now. It's just crazy. The National Western Center is turning out to be kind of cool. There's a lot of cool things going on up there. And I just think that more access to that site and improvements in that neighborhood are so needed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was probably my favorite project.
Yeah, great. Mine, Santa Fe Streetscapes is an easy winner.
That's such an easy winner. Go and listen to the last episode.
I was going to say, go listen to A New Day for Santa Fe. But that's not what I'm going to bring up because it's such an easy winner. What I'm actually going to talk about is the Sun Valley Park. So Sun Valley redevelopment, you've heard us talk a little bit about that on our very first episode, A Fair View of Fairview. But the Sun Valley redevelopment has all of these beautiful buildings going up. It's going to be so much housing for so many people, income restricted. It has spurred private development just north of there. It's really turning Sun Valley into a bustling and interesting place, and it will continue to do so over the coming years. The last kind of piece that I think was missing was this big park between the developments and the river. And without it, it's just kind of a dirt lot right now. But this is the first phase of construction that got funded, about 25%. And it is going to transform this into a really excellent place to luxuriate and be outdoors, be next to the river. I mean, it's going to be a premier place to go spend time near the stream, particularly, of course, for all these people who live in the Sun Valley developments. And so I was excited to see it pass. I was excited to see it in there. I know that some residents there wanted more of it in the bond. But hey, we fund things in phases often. And so I thought this was really exciting, and I'll be excited to go check it out whenever it's built. Sometime over the next 6 years. Yeah. Those are all the bonds. Those are all the things we voted on, and those are our thoughts on them. If you disagree with us vehemently, please leave a comment and
wait for the next election to make your voice heard. And it's not gonna work now, baby. We passed them.
On that note, thanks so much for listening.
The Denver Urbanism Podcast is a production of longtime blog Denver Infill and sister blog Denver Urbanism. We invite you to follow along online at denverurbanism.com. Thanks for listening. Also, a sly observation about the Denver Broncos.
What?
Like, they missed... Sorry, I can say that again, but differently.